Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Breakouts, a podcast where we interview extraordinary founders in just under 20 minutes. I'm your host, Akkshay Khoslaa. Now, you'll find many podcasts out there that are 2 to 3 hours long and interview these wildly successful founders after they've already made it big. But by that point, the founders are already 5, 10, or even 15 years into their journey, so their insights just aren't as actionable anymore. We're doing things a little bit different. We're interviewing founders that are on the cusp of breaking out so that you can learn the playbooks they're using to build category-defining companies today. And we're doing it in just under 20 minutes. Now, just before we get started, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at The Breakouts Pod, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and join our Discord community for aspiring founders. The link is in the description below. And I think that's everything I have for you. So without further ado, here's today's guest. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Breakouts. Today, once again, we have not one, but two phenomenal guests for you. We have David Morgan and Jeff Sherman. Now, these two, they're the CEO and CTO of Zephyr AI, which is a company in the biotech space that recently raised an 18.5 million seed round as of earlier this year. Now, if you missed episode number 1, definitely go have a listen. These guys had such phenomenal insights to share with all of us. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Just before we get started with the second episode, Jeff and David, would you be able to summarize one more time for our listeners that might have missed the first episode? What does Zephyr AI do, and what problem are you guys trying to solve?
Sure. Just to reiterate, we are an AI-driven company that endeavors to address unmet needs across the full spectrum of precision medicine, everything from treatment to prevention. And within treatment, we look at opportunities for drug design, drug development, label expansion. And within prevention, we look to deliver SaaS-based solutions to payers and providers to help in the population management problem.
Awesome. David, anything to add there? Or
No, it's perfect. Jeff did a good job in synopsizing how we think about Zephyr AI.
Awesome. In this second episode, we're going to carve up our time into 4 different sections. We're going to start off by talking about product and how you guys think about making product decisions. For the second part, we're going to talk about distribution. How do you guys think about acquiring customers, partners, all of the above? Part 3, we're going to talk briefly about fundraising and any advice that you guys have for early stage founders that are fundraising in a similar space. And lastly, we're going to talk about operationalizing your business. I'm a bit of a nerd for this part. I love to hear how founders are making their business run efficiently. So to start us off with product, could you guys talk a little bit more about what was your process and methodology for building conviction in the problem that you're currently solving?
That's a great question. I would say that it starts with an ethic around rapid prototyping. So our whole ethos, both in drug discovery, label expansion, what have you, and in our SaaS-based solution, is to build things fast. They don't have to be perfect, but once they're up and running and people can see them and sort of rally around whatever that vision is, I think it really, really helps to kind of galvanize everybody around a common idea.
I think the one of the other things that has been a key to the success is where a lot of our team has come from, where they cut their teeth at Rally Health, pre-acquisition to United and after. They learned a lot about machine learning, a lot about deep learning, a lot about the overall umbrella of AI, and they knew that they were exceedingly good at it, and they understood what would be intimidating to other folks, a lot of huge, unclean, disparate data sets. And armed with that, they said, where are the likely opportunities to build a successful and a valuable business that's going to make a difference? The one thing about this company, and it sounds a little bit Pollyannish, is that we are mission driven. When we start talking about the team a little bit on how we've been able to attract the talent we have, in many cases, it's they've left higher paying jobs to come here because we have a chance to tectonically change the way that drugs are discovered and that healthcare is delivered.
It seems like both of you had a good amount of experience in your respective domains, but how did you guys gain conviction in that, hey, building a data-first predictive solution can actually solve the problem at play here and that people would be willing to pay for it?
Yeah, I incrementally is the right way, I think, to say it. We started very small. We looked for small problems that were almost academic in nature to start, right? To build up some intuition and to build up some belief. And The other thing I'll say about this is that we weren't afraid to share what we were doing early and often with people to get signal and, advice. I mean, it's unsolicited since you didn't ask for me to weigh in on how I think other founders in this space and maybe other spaces should operate. But I think you can't be sheepish about taking your early stuff and getting a sense from, friends, family, potential partners, customers, et cetera, early and out of the gate. And we did that. And I think it really helped in instilling a sense of confidence.
Which, is one thing that Jeff's team is exceedingly good at. And we've had people come in and take a look early on in every time span in between at our product and give us somewhat harsh advice. And the ability to shake that off, not fall in love with your plan, understand that, one data point is one data point, and that you have to build, a constellation of these things to make a decision, be somewhat quantitative. But that, unbelievably open approach to taking advice or constructive criticism has helped us move, I think, a lot quicker than we would have otherwise. And in my mind, it's unique because I've seen folks fall in love with a plan and try to double down on something that ultimately doesn't have commercial viability.
You heard it, folks. Do not fall in love with your plan and be open to iterating, be open to feedback. I think those were all phenomenal points. Let's talk a little bit about distribution. So you guys have a very challenging business to build. It can be transformational if you guys succeed. And, honestly, I'm rooting for you. I think all of our listeners are going to be rooting for you. But you have two different parties that you essentially need to acquire, right? First are the partners that you co-build your models with. And second are the providers that you would sell this kind of SaaS solution to. Could you talk a little bit more about how you, reach out to these folks, how you convince them to hop on? And then, since these folks can obviously take a long time to hop on, how do you minimize your sales cycles?
David, you want to jump in here?
I'll backpedal just a bit on the previous question because I think it's germane to this one. So one of the strategic assumptions that we've built our company under is that this idea of data and using data in a way that, again, starting on the drug discovery side, because that's where the company initially built their models, is that more and more, even the FDA, who probably pre-pandemic was largely stoic and not especially innovative in the way that they did phase 1 through 3 drug approval, phase 4 for that matter. And they're more and more now looking at data, not for new drugs, but using real world data for expanded indications. And so recognizing that, it was a big part of the thesis of building the company and knowing that we're really, really good at it. In terms of the sales cycle, this is exactly why we like the idea of doing phase 1 or pre-phase 1 targets and finding a partner who's incredibly well capitalized to help us get there on the drug discovery side and get to the institute, which of course is a FDA approved drug, and not taking that capital burden on ourselves. And when you think about some of the partners that are out there, call them the top 10 pharma companies, those are the folks that we're talking to in mid-tech, call them mid-level biotech, but sharing that burden and knowing that there's some relevant expertise that they have and we have. That when you go from in silico to wet lab, that's when you spend a lot of money. And so again, back to previous discussion from our first session is being able to nug down the opportunities for success and take literally millions of perturbations down to 100 likely opportunities for success. On the predictive analytics side, it's all about partnerships. And if you again, a lot of folks came from United or Optum, and Rally Health had some financial backers, strategic, and other insurers. This is a group that understands the power of sales through partnerships. You do remove some optionality by us working with MedStar, which is our first partner as we co-develop our predictive analytics tool, first around type 2 diabetes, but eventually under other chronic conditions, and hopefully over some period of time, whole patient populations. But the bona fides you get from working with a top tier institution, literally nationally, if not internationally recognized health system like MedStar, and then using their physicians, because in the end, it's about this is a very, very hard group of customers, if you will, to convince, right? It's about empirical data. It's about peer-reviewed publications. It's about showing that these predictions work. And I think the best way to do that is through invested, and by invested, I mean folks that truly believe that our product works and they're passionate about patient care, and they become your advocates. Our medical advice, we have a medical and scientific advisory board too, that's second to none. They proselytize. They give us advice right now that's most important to us, but certainly they're bought in. And I think the combination of partnerships and our advisors has been the key to us getting a lot of opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise.
David, I love that point that you had earlier, that partnerships are sometimes the best way to do sales. I think one follow-up question, and David and Jeff, anyone feel free to take it, is when you're doing these partnerships with large organizations, one of the stressors that early founders may have about this is that, hey, it can take a long time to get these in place, to get a pilot, to co-develop a model or to sell into an institution. So how do you go about shortening those sales cycles to the point where you can move at a software company's velocity?
Yeah, knock on the door often. No, I mean, I think one way to do it, and I mentioned this earlier, this idea of always showing, of always being able to show the next iteration of what it is that you're building in the next conversation that you have, right? I think there's a lot to be said for momentum in these relationships. And so I find that the more that you can show incrementally at each touch point with a potential partner as you're working through the logistics and ultimately inking a deal is going to move things along faster.
Yeah, I think that's this idea of iteration and listening. Like, there's two schools of thought when you're talking about truly disruptive tech companies, right? There's folks that believe so much in their mission that they're not dissuaded by a lot of folks that would tell them that you're tilting at windmills or some other more accurate analogy, and they disrupt in a way that is societal changing. But I think there's also a hybrid approach that where we're listening to customers, understanding where their pain points are, and we're doing that in advance of us falling in love with our plan. We're writing a lot of code to something that we think is going to be valuable, but it's not going to be immediately useful. And in some cases, negotiating is a bad word. Deciding on a R&D plan that is building a tool that's going to be part of a larger product in the future, but it's going to be immediately commercializable.
Interesting. I think those were all great points. Let's talk a little bit about fundraising. You guys raised a pretty sizable seed round. Some people might not even say that an 18.5 million raise is a seed. I'm curious, do you guys have one unconventional tip for early stage founders that are fundraising that isn't your standard, hey, go tell a story or batch all your interviews in 2 weeks or whatever? Is there that kind of one unconventional tip that sticks out?
Do you have anything here, David? I can offer something.
Yeah, Jeff, you go. I mean, I have one thing. I'm not sure it's easily replicable, but go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I think for us, we were fortunate in raising in that one of our co-founders is a repeat founder who's done this several times before in his life. And so that makes it much easier to go raise capital. In the event, like most people, you don't have that sort of relationship and you still endeavor to raise a big round, I think, as you point out, like a lot of the conventional wisdom applies. And the only other thing that I'll point out is seemingly a common theme in this conversation is at every touch point, make sure you have something new to show.
So there's two things. And as we talk about fundraising, we were fortunate because we were incubated out of Red Cell, which their sole function, they have two arms, one of which is healthcare and the other one is defense, and their sole function. We do have some minority investments in different companies, but really the core function of Red Cell. And so we recognize at Red Cell, Jeff and I are both also work for Red Cell. I'm an operating partner over there and Jeff's the CTO, is that there is a place for incubations, and there are other examples of great incubators out there, but it's finding a place that's really, really good at helping you distill down your ideas. The experiments, the reason why I joined is because of my conversations with Jeff, because he showed me the experiments. And so starting out with, okay, how do we build some experiments that are compelling, that show to even a learned audience that this is real? Like, everyone knows the generous use of AI, it is all over the digital market, the digital landscape, but showing that we're really doing something that's predictive and training a model to see things differently, and that 1 and 1, if you will, equals 3. That was compelling. I think the other piece of it was making sure that we were doing things that showed the power of it, publishing papers, and it's relatively inexpensive. And when you have $0 at startup, I get that spending $500,000 or $1 million, but for less than $1 million, a lot of those things that convinced me as a lifelong healthcare CEO executive that there was a there. And so designing those things up front and maybe not swinging for the fences and saying, okay, what are the experiments that could tell the story for us was what I thought was really, really, really compelling.
I think that's such an important point here, especially when you're building something that is so challenging, both on a technological and operational level. Having experiments that can show incremental value can be a great way, to rally all kinds of people to join your startup or invest in your startup. So thank you both for outlining that. That was great. Let's move on to our last section for this episode. So the last section is about operationalizing your business. And I'm curious, Jeff and David, do you have, one or two strategies or hacks that you've used to make your business more effective, make your team work better so that you can hit your goals? And I think this is an especially interesting question coming from both of you, because it seems like you have a multi-pronged strategy of where you also need you need to go partner with certain companies to build models, and then you also need to go sell to institutions and providers. So there's a complex strategy at play, and I'm sure it's hard to execute against it. So any strategies or hacks that you can share with our listeners that have helped you?
You want me to start, Jeff? Yeah, so I'd say from the strategy standpoint and the board standpoint is, having a series of advisors has been allowed us once again to sometimes get our feelings hurt, but move quickly beyond failure and get to the right answer. That's been helpful. I can't take credit for the pandemic, but post-pandemic, we live in a virtual world, and a lot of the talent that Jeff's been able to hire has been a function of us being in a virtual environment and making sure that there's tools. I've heard, we've read the Wall Street Journal articles, we've seen all of the commentary on the complexity, and we've seen in the news on certain companies moving back more to less virtual and more traditional. I think there's a hybrid opportunity, but for us right now, it means that we can attract the very best talent, and we create environments where people can collaborate virtually seamlessly. And that has been, we wouldn't have been able to attract the talent as quickly as we have. And, the onboarding virtually is in a disruption to the new employee who's spinning up. The things that we've accomplished in barely a year or 2 years now, maybe from rough idea to 5 million and close to product here in less than a year, is because we've been able to onboard talent super quickly and to become immediately productive.
Yeah, I'll only add to that from an engineering and science perspective. Operationally, I think it's been very effective in this early stage company, endeavoring to do many things to have a pretty flat hierarchy. So we're flat. In addition to that, I think it's really important from an operational perspective to meet people kind of where they are. So I'm always interested in putting somebody in a position where they're interested, can be successful, what have you. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's important for us to be malleable, in that regard. And I think we do a really good job. And the last thing is that we really encourage people to touch many parts of the system. So we have people who started primarily purely in life science who are now writing code, right? So we really kind of encourage that kind of engagement across the platform. And I think it's really served us well.
Yeah, I think the idea of moving, and listen, it's not at all completely scalable. So I don't want to suggest that you can always do this, but the idea of having subspecialty engineers, most companies don't have the luxury of that anyway. I'd say startups for sure, but having more generalists and less subspecialty, and I think it's an extreme example to suggest that our molecular biologists are going to be coding all the time. They do, but that's probably not how. But the ability to break down these cylinders of excellence that most companies feel compelled to organize around, and trying to keep that flat, it's the speed of innovation. It definitely enables. And so that's a good point that Jeff brought up.
Awesome. I think there were a lot of great tips there for our listeners. One thing I can call out is, hey, try a flat hierarchy. That makes things a lot more effective, encourages more communication. Hire really effectively. And I think, David, you spoke to this. When you hire really effectively, you need to make sure you have the tools in place so that the people you've hired can communicate and collaborate effectively. So those are all really important things for early stage founders to listen to. So thank you for sharing them with us. Right as we wrap up this episode, I wanted to ask, you guys have raised a large seed recently. Are you hiring? Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
Yeah, we're certainly looking, as everyone is, at raising more money. I think all startups should be always raising. And I spend most of my weeks talking to different venture capital groups at different stages, and it's in individual investors, as well as family shops and folks that want to deploy capital. But understanding that when's the right time to do that. I think also because there's a degree of sophistication perhaps that I have given my background and that we have at Red Cell, we're looking at all options, right? Whether it's debt tied to an eventual A or venture debt, but making sure that, like all founders, you want to maintain as much equity as you can going in and not trickle fund so that you're always starving and raising, because that can be a distraction, but also making sure that you're maintaining the value of the hard work that you put in as a founder. So yes, of course we're raising and we look to test the waters in this quarter and in Q1. And if not, we'll continue with a conservative burn rate into 2024, thanks in large part to that seed you mentioned in the beginning. As it relates to hiring, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Yeah, I guess what I want to plug is Zephyr AI being a fantastic place to work on the cutting edge of life sciences and population health management. And we're always looking for motivated, talented people across engineering, life sciences, computational biology, data science as well. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me or David.
Awesome. There you have it, folks. Go check out Zephyr AI at zephyrai.bio. Check out Jeff and David for sure. It's no big deal. They're only working to literally cure cancer. But thank you so much for listening, folks. Jeff, David, such a pleasure to have you both on. We'll see everyone next time on the Breakouts.
Thanks
Akkshay.
All right, and that wraps up today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. Now, just before I let you go, I wanted to reiterate one thing. We're trying to build the best podcast out there for aspiring entrepreneurs, and to do that, we need your help. The best way you can help us is by joining our Discord community. The link is in the description below, and then leaving us feedback. Tell us how we did. Tell us how we can improve. We're eagerly waiting to hear from you. Other than that, show us some love and follow us on Twitter at The Breakouts Pod. And I think that's everything I have for you. We'll see you next time on The Breakouts.